Welcome back. You are listening to the home of forbidden romances. Prepare yourself, because tonight's story will leave you breathless. The slap echoed through the marble corridor like a gunshot, silencing the whispers of the weeping mourners instantly. My hand stung, palm throbbing red, but the man standing before me, tall, imposing, and looking at me with eyes devoid of humanity, didn't even flinch. "Are you finished, Julian?" Silas asked, his voice a low, terrifying rumble that vibrated through the floorboards. He adjusted the cuff of his pristine black suit, looking down at me with that familiar, icy disdain that had defined my entire existence since the day my father brought him home. "You killed him," I spat, the venom in my voice masking the trembling of my knees. "You drove him to his grave with your ambition, and now you stand here, poised to take the throne before his body is even cold." Silas took a step forward. The air in the hallway seemed to compress, sucked into the vacuum of his presence. He was a predator, a creature of calculated violence wrapped in Armani silk. He crowded me against the cold wall, his hand slamming next to my head, trapping me. The scent of sandalwood, rain, and expensive tobacco filled my senses, a scent I hated, a scent that haunted my dreams. "If I wanted him dead, little brother," Silas whispered, leaning down until his lips brushed the shell of my ear, sending a traitorous shiver down my spine, "I would have done it years ago. And if I wanted you gone, you wouldn't be standing here breathing my air." The rain in Seoul was relentless that night, washing away the grime of the city, but failing to cleanse the rot within the Kong family estate. I was Julian Kong, the illegitimate son. The mistake. The stain on the impeccable record of the Kong conglomerate. And Silas? Silas was the masterpiece. Adopted at 10, groomed to be the perfect heir, molded into a ruthless corporate shark who viewed emotions as liabilities. Technically, he was my older brother. Legally, we were family. But in the dark quiet of the mansion, amidst the shadows where the light couldn't reach, we were enemies. Or so I told myself to survive the way he looked at me. The funeral reception was a Shark Tank. Board members circled, champagne flutes in hand, waiting to see who would bleed first. The will reading was scheduled for midnight, a dramatic flair typical of my late father. I retreated to the library, needing to escape the suffocating pity of the guests. I poured a glass of whiskey, my hands shaking. I had nothing. No allies. No power. Just the Kong name, which felt more like a brand on cattle than a legacy. The heavy oak doors creaked open. Silas entered. He had removed his tie, the top button of his shirt undone, revealing the hollow of his throat. It was a rare display of disarray for a man who usually looked like he was carved from granite. He locked the door behind him. The sound of the deadbolt sliding home was deafening. "What do you want, Silas? Haven't you humiliated me enough for one day?" I gripped the glass, the ice clinking against the crystal. "Humiliation is a matter of perspective," he said, walking toward the desk. He didn't look at me. He picked up a letter opener, testing the tip against his thumb. "The vultures out there are betting on your demise, Julian. They think I'm going to throw you to the wolves. Aren't you?" I challenged, stepping out of the shadows. "You've made it clear since we were teenagers that I am a nuisance. The bastard child who steals resources." Silas stopped. He slowly turned his head, his dark eyes locking onto mine. There was a fire there, buried deep beneath layers of ice. "Is that what you think?" "It's what you said. I said a lot of things to keep you alive," he murmured, almost to himself. He crossed the room in 3 long strides. Before I could retreat, he gripped my chin, his fingers strong and calloused. He forced me to look up at him. The height difference was daunting. He towered over me, a monolith of power. "The will reading is a trap," Silas said, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper. "Father didn't leave you money, Julian. He left you the debt. The insurmountable, distinct debt of his failed ventures in Macau. If you accept the inheritance tonight, the creditors will own you by morning. They will sell you piece by piece." My blood ran cold. "Why? Why are you telling me this?" "You win if I fall." "I don't want to win against you," Silas said, his thumb brushing my lower lip. The touch was electric, confusing, terrifying. "I want to own the board. I want the empire. But you, I never wanted you destroyed." "Liar." I breathed, though my heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. "Believe what you want," he said, releasing me abruptly. But you are leaving with me. Now, I'm not going anywhere with you. You have two choices, Silas said, his tone shifting back to that professional, commanding coldness. Stay here, accept the inheritance, and become a slave to the triads in Macau. Or come with me, renounce your claim, and let me handle the fallout. And what is the price, Silas? I asked, narrowing my eyes. Everything with you has a price. Silas stared at me for a long moment, his gaze dropping to my lips, then back to my eyes. The hunger I saw there was raw, terrifying, and undeniably possessive. You, he said simply. You belong to me until the debt is cleared. He took me to a penthouse I didn't know he owned. It was a fortress of glass and steel overlooking the Han River, cold and impersonal, just like him. For 3 weeks, I was a prisoner in luxury. Silas locked me away from the world while he dismantled the board of directors. I watched the news from the massive living room television. Silas Kong ruthless takeover, the headline screamed. Asterisk, illegitimate son Julian Kong missing. Asterisk, I saw him only at night. He would return late, smelling of city smoke and exhaustion. He would loosen his tie, pour a drink, and sit in the armchair across from me, watching me read or pace. The silence between us was heavy, charged with years of unspoken words. It broke on a Tuesday. A thunderstorm was battering the glass. I was standing by the window, watching the lightning fork across the sky. The elevator dinged. Silas stumbled in. He wasn't the composed statue I knew. His jacket was gone, his white shirt was soaked in blood on the left side, and his face was pale. Silas, I gasped, the animosity vanishing instantly, replaced by a surge of panic I didn't know I was capable of feeling for him. I ran to him as he collapsed onto the sofa. What happened? A disagreement, he wheezed, clutching his side. With the shareholders. You're shot, I said, my hands hovering over the wound. The red was spreading fast. We need a hospital. No hospital, he gritted out, grabbing my wrist. His grip was bruising. They'll finish the job. You have to do it. I can't. You can. The first aid kit. Bathroom. The next hour was a blur of horror and adrenaline. I cut away his shirt, revealing a torso sculpted by discipline but marred by violence. The bullet had grazed his ribs. I cleaned it, stitched it with trembling hands, while he sat there, jaw clenched, sweat beading on his forehead, not making a sound. When it was done, I slumped to the floor, my hands covered in his blood. Silas breathed out, a long, shaky exhale. He looked down at me. You have steady hands. Why did they do this? I asked, my voice cracking. Because I refused to hand you over, he said quietly. I looked up, meeting his gaze. What? Silas leaned back, closing his eyes. The deal for the takeover. They wanted the Macau debt leverage. They wanted you. I told them I'd burn the company to ash before I let them touch you. The revelation hit me harder than the slap at the funeral. All these years. The insults. The cold shoulder. The way he pushed me away at school, embarrassing me in front of his friends. You were protecting me? I whispered. By treating me like trash? If they knew I cared, Silas opened his eyes, the darkness in them swirling with pain. They would have used you against me. You were the only weakness I had, Julian. The only crack in the armor. I'm not your weakness, I said, rising to my knees between his spread legs. I'm your brother. Don't, he warned, his voice a low growl. Don't use that word. You know as well as I do that paper is the only thing binding us. There is no blood between us, Julian. Is that why you hate me? I asked, daring to reach out, placing my hand on his uninjured thigh. Because I'm not blood? I don't hate you, he said, his voice ragged. He grabbed my hand, but instead of pushing it away, he pulled me closer. I hate that I've spent 10 years wanting to ruin you in the most beautiful way possible. The air left my lungs. The confession hung between us, heavy and intoxicating. The slow burn that had been simmering for a decade suddenly roared into a wildfire. Silas, I breathed. He didn't wait. His hand tangled in my hair, pulling my head back, and he kissed me. It wasn't a gentle kiss. It was an assault. It was angry, desperate, a release of 10 years of suppression. He tasted of whiskey and iron. His lips were demanding, his tongue invading, claiming me with a possessiveness that made my toes curl. I should have pushed him away. I should have remembered the years of neglect. But my body betrayed me. I melted against him, my hands clutching his shoulders, careful of his wound but desperate for his heat. He groaned into my mouth, shifting to pull me onto his lap. The friction was electric. "You have no idea," he murmured against my neck, biting the sensitive skin there, making me gasp. "Watching you walk around that house. Watching you smile at others. It was torture. You have a strange way of showing affection." I panted, my head falling back as his lips traveled down my throat. "I'm not a good man, Julian," he said, his hand sliding under my shirt, his palms searing hot against my skin. "I'm selfish. I'm cruel. And now that I have you here, now that the world thinks you're gone, I'm not letting you go. I don't want to go," I admitted, the truth spilling out. Silas pulled back, his eyes searching mine. He looked at me not as a brother, not as a liability, but as the only thing in the world that mattered. "Then be mine," he commanded. "Not by law, not by debt, but by choice." "I'm yours," I whispered. He kissed me again, slower this time, deeper. It was a promise, a seal on a contract written in blood and desire. Outside, the storm raged, but inside, the war was over. The morning sun filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating the tangled sheets. Silas was already awake, dressed in a fresh suit, standing by the window watching the city. I sat up, the sheet pooling at my waist. My body ached in places I didn't know existed, a sweet, lingering reminder of the night. He turned when he heard me move. The cold mask was back in place, but when his eyes landed on me, it fractured. A softness, reserved only for me, broke through. "Get dressed," he said, tossing a velvet box onto the bed. I opened it. Inside was a platinum signet ring with the Kong crest, but modified. It was intertwined with a new design. A partnership. "What is this?" "The board surrendered this morning," Silas said, walking over to the bed. He leaned down, bracing his hands on the mattress, trapping me once again. They feared the consequences of the failed hit. I own it all now. The company, the assets, the city. He took the ring and slid it onto my finger. It fit perfectly. "And now," Silas whispered, kissing my forehead, "I have the queen to match the king." I looked at the ring, then up at the man who had been my tormentor, my protector, and now my lover. The world would call it forbidden. They would call it a scandal. But looking into the eyes of the monster who had burned the world down just to keep me safe, I knew one thing. I would gladly reign in hell with him. And that is how the viper tamed the wolf. If you enjoyed seeing Silas take absolute control, destroy that like button. And tell me in the comments, would you forgive a lover who hurt you to save you? Or is the deception unforgivable? I'll be reading your answers. Subscribe for the next chapter. Until then, prompt image. Prompt. Masterpiece, best quality, high-res, 1.2. Korean manhwa style, semi-realistic, digital art. 2 men, BL, Yaoi, man 1. Silas, tall, dominant, sharp jawline, black slicked hair, wearing unbuttoned bloody white dress shirt, sitting on leather sofa, intense gaze, bandage on ribs. Man 2. Julian, smaller frame, messy dark hair, wearing oversized silk shirt, kneeling between man 1's legs, looking up with longing and submission, hand on man 1's knee. Background is dark luxury penthouse. Living room, rain on floor-to-ceiling windows, city lights bouquet, moody blue and orange lighting, cinematic composition, emotional atmosphere, intricate details.